Hi there, welcome back. We are going to continue with our ELA mini lesson and we're going to do mini lesson number 7. Our focus today is on compare and contrast. So please make sure that you have your weather and climate booklet and your homeschool work packet so we can get started. Here we go. Alright, so I think this one's going to kind of be a refresher to everybody, but we're going to talk about compare and contrast. So there's two different things that we do for compare and contrast. For compare, we look at how things are alike or how they're similar. We have some clue words like also, alike, to, and, similar, same, and both. So when we see the word compare, we're looking to how they are similar. Usually when we're looking at our Venn diagram, the compare goes in the middle, meaning what do both sides have in common. Then we have the word contrast. Contrast means the opposite, so how they are different. So some clue words are although, however, unlike, but, not, and different. So the difference in our Venn diagram are on the other side of the two things that we're comparing to. So this is a Venn diagram where we look at where things intersect, meaning where they compare, where they're alike, and then how they are different. So a really quick, brief introduction on what compare and contrast is. Compare, alike, contrast, different. Okay, so for the past couple of days, what we've been doing is we've been looking very closely at two different texts. The first text is on page 4, and it is called Fair Weather Clouds. This is the text. The other text that we've been looking at is on page 6, 6 through 8, and it is called Earth's Weather and Climate. This is the text, and it continues on and goes to here. Okay, first thing we want to do first, before we do anything, is to go back and reread them. Going back and reread them helps us get our mind into ELA, gets our mind focused and ready to go. So go to page 4 and read Fair Weather Clouds. Okay, I already see a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. What our lesson is going to do today is compare and contrast specific parts of each of the different texts. So turn to your own school packet to this page, and we're going to start by reading the directions. It says, after reading Fair Weather Clouds and Earth's Weather and Climate, compare and contrast the following categories. Okay, so on the left side, I see fair weather clouds, and then in the middle it says categories to compare, and then on the other side it says Earth's weather and climate. So this is going to be our version of a Venn diagram. We have fair weather clouds on this side, we have Earth's weather and climate, and then we have the categories to compare in the middle. So it's going to look a little bit differently. But what the categories do is it focuses our attention to what we're going to be comparing. So we're not going to just be spouting out a lot of different ideas. What it's going to do is it's going to focus and have us really analyze both of the texts. So we're categories to compare. We're going to compare topic, purpose, structure, language, vocabulary, and how text explains weather. Okay, so the first one is the topic. Usually when we look for the topic, we look at the title. Title for Fair Weather Clouds is Fair Weather Clouds. So what's the topic on? Clouds. So for topic, write clouds. And then for Earth's Weather and Climate, look at the title, Earth's Weather and Climate. What's the topic? The topic is about weather and climate. Write that down. Okay, so category number 2 that we are going to compare for both of the texts is the purpose. A lot of students like to think of pie for purpose. Purpose is easy as pie. Persuade, to inform, or to entertain. So, go to Fairweather Clouds, page 4. And what type of text is it? It's a poem. Why is the author writing the poem? Is it to persuade us of clouds? Not really. Is it to inform us of clouds? It does, right? Remember we have those footnotes? It informs us of different clouds, but is that the purpose? Is that why the author wrote it, to inform us about different clouds? No. The reason they have footnotes is to explain the clouds just a little bit. So, it's not to persuade, it's not to inform. The purpose for Fairweather Clouds is to entertain. It is a poem. Poem is entertainment. Poetry is making readers feel things and kind of go through the non-literal language process. So the purpose of Fairweather Clouds is to entertain. Write that down. Moving on to page 6, Earth's Weather and Climate. I know that the type of text is an informational science. It's an informational science. There are graphs. There are photographs. There's paragraphs. Pictures, different. So, is it to persuade, to inform, or to entertain? It's an informational text. It is to inform. So for purpose on Earth's Weather and Climate, it is to inform. And I would go a little bit further, to inform about blank, weather and climate. Good. Okay, so now we're going to look at the structure. So structure, turn to page 4 of Fairweather Clouds, is what does the text look like? Looking at the text, it does not look like normal paragraphs. There are lines with groupings of lines called stanzas, and it is in fact a poem. So the structure is a poem, and it's built in with lines and stanzas. So lines are each of the individual lines, and then a stanza is a grouping of a line. So here's a stanza, here's one, and here's one. So for the structure of Fairweather Clouds, it's a poem. Okay, so you would write that down. For Earth's Weather and Climate, the structure is in paragraphs and graphic features. It's an informational text. So for Fairweather Clouds, I would write informational text. All right, the next category that we are going to compare is the language. So turn to Fairweather Clouds. And remember, when we were reading over, we were looking for metaphors, right? Metaphors are examples of non-literal language. They use their language to paint pictures and to compare to unlike things. They use a lot of metaphors in non-literal language. So for the language, it is non-literal, meaning it's figurative. It doesn't match what they're actually saying. They're using metaphors and similes and items like that. Non-literal language for language, Fairweather Clouds. Write that down. For Earth's Weather and Climate on page 6, the language is informational, right? It's an informational science text, so it is to inform. Is it literal or non-literal? It's going to be literal because they're explaining exactly what Earth is and what climate is. They're being very realistic. They're not comparing. They're not making any crazy comparisons. What they're doing is just informing the reader on what Earth's weather and climate is. So for language on Earth's weather and climate, it is literal language. Okay, so the next part that we are going to describe is to compare and contrast is the vocabulary. So looking at fair weather clouds, when we're talking about vocabulary, we're looking at the words that it uses. So right here, I see the sea, the green sea, tilt my head back, splaying in the waves of the prairie, above the sky, the blue field, cotton, billowing. So I see a lot of descriptive words. So for vocabulary, write descriptive words. But I also see splay, cumulus, and nimbus, and billowing. Right here, there's definitions of them. So I also see some science terms in there too. I see especially cumulus and nimbus. Those are two types of clouds that are out there. So there's a little bit of scientific words in our poem, which is really cool. And then turn to Earth's weather and climate. What is weather? Like right now, weather describes the atmosphere. Climate, we have words, the vocabulary like measure and temperature and precipitation and things like that. These are also very specific science words that goes along with the informational scientific text. It's using words to describe weather and climate in more of like a scientific way. Okay, so go ahead for vocabulary on Earth's weather and climate, many scientific terms for weather and climate. Okay, so the last category that we're going to compare and contrast is how the text explains weather. So for fair weather clouds, how does the text explain weather? It describes the clouds and how the clouds change in a more poetic form, meaning in a more figurative and non-literal way. It's not super sciencey, it's more artistic, and it's a poem. So they describe the weather and how the clouds change over. So go ahead and kind of write down how that text explains weather. And then for how does Earth's weather and climate explain weather, Earth's weather and climate is very scientific, very rigorous. It's an informational text, so the purpose is to inform. So how does the text explain weather? It informs using a lot of scientific verbiage and a lot of interesting vocabulary that you need to kind of learn and grow from. So go ahead and write down how Earth's weather and climate explains weather. All right, and the last thing we do before we move on from this ELA lesson is we answer the question on the bottom. So it says, both fair weather clouds and Earth's weather and climate are texts that use descriptive language to describe the clouds and explain weather. How are the clouds described in both passages? Choose all that apply. So for this one, how are they alike? How do they explain the weather in both passages? Go check them off. It says all that apply. It might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So go answer that question right now. And don't forget to log it on your homeschool log. That is it for this ELA mini lesson. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you liked it. Come back for the next one. Bye.